Like Ananda was saying, I am Raquel Tatar. I am the Chief Science Officer for Human, a nonprofit that translates the science of well-being into products and tools that actual people can use in the real world. So we're here to discuss why well-being matters for educators and for their students, and then specifically what change makers can do today, right now, to actually improve it. So first off, what is even, well-being? What is well-being science? And ultimately, we've been talking about well-being for hundreds of years. We all know what well-being feels like. We know what the absence of well-being feels like. But what is it? Before something can be a science, we need to be able to define it. And there are many different definitions of well-being across a variety of different orgs and cultures. And the broadest sense of well-being is that it's not just the absence of illness and it's just the absence of mental illness. And it's not just happiness. It's not about being happy and positive all the time. It encompasses the physical and mental and social characteristics of your entire existence, as well as the ability to have a meaningful and productive life. So it's all of the parts, the good and the bad, the pretty and the ugly, the big moments and the interstitial moments. It's everything. All of those parts are part of your well-being. And similarly, well-being science is an interdisciplinary field that connects psychology and neuroscience and public health and physiology, all of these together to understand and promote what truly enables people to flourish and not just to survive. So, as a well-being scientist, I'm essentially studying how we can help people to lead meaningful, connected, healthy, fulfilling, purpose-driven lives. And when I told my parents this is what I was going to be studying, they asked me the question that many people ask me, which why does it matter? Well-being can feel like a nice to have. It might be nice to have better well-being, but do you actually need it? And we have good evidence to suggest that yes, it absolutely matters. It is a fundamental necessity for our survival and flourishing as a species. So well-being is really a fundamental human right. A few years ago, the US Surgeon General report came out and found that 50% of US adults are lonely, and that lack of social connection can actually increase their risk of premature death as much as smoking 15 cigarettes per day. Loneliness and social isolation among children and adolescents will increase the risk of depression and anxiety. And this doesn't just matter to the individuals, it matters to the whole communities. There's one study in 2021 that found that community violence decreased when social connectedness increased. There was an association in a reduction of 21% in reductions in murders and a 20% reduction in motor vehicle theft when there was an increase in connectedness. And Gallup found that the cost of lower well-being in recent years has cost the global economy almost $500 billion in loss of productivity in the workplace. Because we know that increased loneliness in the workplace is associated with higher burnout, declining trust, engagement, and ultimately higher attrition. And teachers are really feeling this on a daily basis, even above their similar non-teaching counterparts. So there's a report that came out that showed that 62% of teachers are reporting frequent job-related stress, which is almost twice the level of their non-teacher peers are reporting. And that 44% of teachers are leaving within the first 5 years in the profession, which has a huge not only financial and capital cost to education systems, but a real human capital cost as well. These are actual people that went into a profession, a purpose-driven profession, and then are essentially driven out. So ultimately, lack of well-being is bad for individuals, it's bad for communities, and it's bad for the world, which makes well-being a fundamental human right and human necessity. These are not soft issues, these are not just numbers on a spreadsheet. These are a call for about an urgent public health crisis and a workplace concern that we all have to share together. It's not just about feeling good, it's not just about being happy and feeling positive. It's about functioning well every day, on good days and on bad days, on good moments and bad moments. And it's about functioning well together as a community and as a society. So we really do have what we call an absolute moral imperative to really improve our own well-being and our community's well-being across different professions, and especially one like educators that can impact so many other lives. So what can we actually do? Is well-being the destination? Is it the outcome of something that we are striving towards? And the answer, as it often is in science, is yes and no. So, yes, well-being is the outcome. It is a variable that we can measure at the end of something, but it is also the journey. The journey to well-being includes well-being. And what I mean by that is that training well-being is something that we can do to improve our feelings of well-being later on. And we do know from our best available science that training well-being is possible and has an impact on our brains. And we call the brain's ability to change neuroplasticity. We can actually change our brains at any moment in our lives. And we can train our well being at any moment in our lives. And that training has an impact on our brains. Well being isn't fixed. From the moment you are born to the moment you die, you can be practicing well being. It's not the outcome and it's not the destination, it is the journey. And a lot of times we hear people say, well, I'm just not wired that way. Change the wiring. We can absolutely change the wiring. You can train the mind to change your brain. So this neuroplasticity can come at any age. You can build these new habits of awareness, of resilience, of connection at any point. It just takes practice. And practice can sometimes sound scary or it can sound hard. Practice is just a choice. It's just a choice to do a thing in a particular moment. I can make a choice to do a thing in a particular moment. And if I miss that moment, I can choose to do it again. You have another set of opportunities 2 minutes down the road. And we found that both positive and negative experiences can change the brain, and then those changes can be associated with changes in behavior and then their overall well-being. A study in 2012 found that gray matter in the amygdala changed after 8 weeks of well-being training, and that change in the brain was associated with decreased perceived stress. And there was another study in 2013 that found just 2 weeks of compassion training for about 30 minutes a day increase pro-social behavior and altruism. So our best science tells us well-being is a learnable, trainable skill. Now, for well-being science, before we can train something, we need to understand it. And before we understand it, we need to define it. And before we define it, we need parameters. So we gave ourselves, the scientists at the Center for Healthy Minds gave themselves 4 parameters to come up with a framework of well-being. And the first one of those is that it had to be about global flourishing. So the idea wasn't to create a scientific framework of well-being that only applied to American audiences or to European audiences, but something that really pertained to aspects of well-being that were universal across cultures and across countries. And to have a solid body of evidence around the trainability and the learnability and the impact. It had to be something that people could actively do and train. There are some things that you can't train yourself. You can't train yourself out of your structural barriers, but you can train yourself in specific habits and skills. And it had to be associated with specific neural networks in the brain. So based on those parameters, we created the Healthy Minds framework, or scientists created the Healthy Minds framework. And it's based on 4 pillars: awareness, connection, insight, and purpose. Now, awareness is the skills of being present, being mindful in that moment, being focused and attentive, and also some of the elements of self-awareness. And connection is about staying connected with yourself and a fellow human being. So not only kindness, but also self-kindness, and not only compassion, but self-compassion and appreciation. And then we have insight, which is a relative newcomer to the well-being science field. And it's really around this practice and skill of curiosity and really approaching moments and yourself with curiosity instead of judgment. And instead of berating yourself for thinking some way or doing something or not doing something, and really approaching it from a lens of being curious and trying to understand what might be going on, why you might be thinking or feeling in a particular way, what might be driving a particular behavior, and not judging yourself for it. And to really just approach that with curiosity. And then finally, there's purpose, which is not only about knowing what your big purpose in life is, which is oftentimes what we talk about when we talk about purpose, but also embodying that purpose in the small moments of your life and finding meaning in the interstitial moments of everybody's life and their day. So purpose can show up when you're choosing what profession to go into, who do you marry, what country do you move to, but also in how you drive your kids to school that day, or how you clean the cat litter, or whether or not you're going to help your kid brush their teeth. All of these moments, you can be embodying your purpose and reflecting on that purpose. So like I mentioned, based on this, We then created Human, which is a nonprofit that translates this science into tools to cultivate and measure well-being. And ultimately, we're driving towards a kinder, wiser, more compassionate world. And I mentioned that because Human created the Healthy Minds Program app, or HMP for short. We took the Healthy Minds framework, we created content and put it into a freely available app. It is available worldwide. You can all download it if you want to. And it has hundreds of hours of content, and it's specifically designed to train people on the fundamental skills of well-being. And then we took that app and we tested it, and we keep testing it, and we're going to test it until the cows come home. And what we have found across a variety of different rigorous studies is that using HMP, oftentimes when compared to a group of people who didn't use the HMP, we saw decreases in depressive symptoms, in distress, and overall stress and anxiety, in waking cortisol, which is a physiological marker of chronic stress, and also increases in social connectedness and purpose. But really, there are two studies that I want to highlight for this particular audience today. And one of them is from a randomized control trial that we did, that scientists at the Center for Healthy Minds did with 600 teachers and staff in the Madison School District here in Wisconsin. One half of that sample was randomly assigned to be a control group, so just living their lives normally, and then the other group was randomly assigned to complete the Healthy Minds program for 28 days. Now, not surprisingly, we found that the group who practiced well-being skills had a significant reduction in overall distress, and that this remained at several weeks after follow-up. So the group that received well-being training, even after we told them to keep doing this and they were just on their own, they maintained those well-being improvements over time when compared to people who were just going about their day normally. And these results are impressive in and of themselves. This is just an app that's free and available to anybody, so anybody could have these results. But my favorite part of this study is actually when researchers looked into the average amount of time that people spent practicing, and it was over 5 minutes per day. 5 minutes! It doesn't change a whole lot of time and a whole lot of effort to change your life and change the world. I have 5 minutes. Except, being real for just a hot second here, I am also a mother of 3 children, 7 and under, with a set of twins. 5 minutes is not something I have every day. Sometimes 5 minutes to stop and do literally anything feels like a luxury that maybe happens once a week. And this is where well-being science can also come to the rescue, because it doesn't actually matter if you stop during those 5 minutes to practice. It just matters that you actually practice. Consistency is really the active ingredient here. It doesn't matter. So it's much more impactful if you're able to help people practice a little bit every day than if you stop everything for a day or two and then just go really deep for those couple of days. That'll be helpful too, but that's not really where the big change is happening. It's in those little moments, a little bit every day. Do it while washing dishes, brushing your teeth, brushing someone else's teeth, standing in line at the grocery store, hiding in the closet so that nobody touches you for just 10 seconds. And one of the things that we know from habit change literature is something called habit bundling. So you pair an existing habit with a new habit that you're trying to create. So if you're trying to create the practice of practicing well-being, pair it with something that you're already kind of doing automatically every day. And for me, what that looks like realistically is I practice right after I drop off my oldest son at school. I do that 5 times a week. I'm going to do that 5 times a week because he is required to go to school. Therefore, I am required to take him. So I will always have that drive back home. And instead of immediately checking email or turning on the news in my car, I will oftentimes do a 5-minute practice in the car. Am I absolutely consistent every single second of every single day? If my boss ever watches this recording, yes, I do it every single day without fail. Realistically, that's not real life. But that's the best thing, is I can always try in the next 5 minutes. And that's okay, because it doesn't take a whole lot. Well-being is a skill that only requires 5 minutes of practice. And we just have to choose to do it. And this is a choice that we will always have every single day. Whether or not we actually do it, the choice is always there to do it. And the skill is really longer reaching. In another study that we found that had content that was similar to HMP, found that pre-service teachers, so teachers that were still training to be teachers, got a little bit of a well-being training and then went into the workforce, and they were 6 times more likely to still be teaching 3 to 4 years later. Now, if you remember, almost half of teachers quit the teaching profession in the first 5 years. And here's 5 minutes per day that they could be doing that could change that statistic. Now, when I mentioned that you can either stop what you're doing and do what we would consider sort of like a traditional meditation or well-being practice where you stop and you close your eyes and you sit, that's available too. But in the app, we added in the ability to do what we call an active practice. This is what I do more often than not, where you don't have to stop, you don't have to close your eyes. It is just an audio that you are listening to, that you can listen to doing whatever, going for a walk, washing the dishes, whatever fits into your life. And then we did a study to compare whether outcomes were different depending on whether people were choosing the sitting versus the active meditation. So this wasn't a randomized controlled trial. We weren't assigning them to this. This was a naturalistic study where people were just selecting themselves. But even then, we still saw that there were no actual differences in the outcomes. So it doesn't actually matter how you practice. It just actually matters that you do. So that's the thing that we're really driving towards when we're thinking about how we can impact well-being on a large scale. We're this choice to practice well-being, that it only takes 5 minutes, that you don't have to stop, and that nothing really stops you from doing it, just yourself. So it's not one big thing. It's lots of small things every day that will make a difference. And we have good evidence to suggest that the lack of well-being in the classroom can be contagious, meaning it can impact the well-being and the outcomes of students. So we have a study that showed that large amounts of perceived stress in teachers was associated with morning cortisol, which again is a marker of chronic stress in elementary school teachers. So we know that the well-being of teachers impacts the well-being of students. So if the lack of well-being is impactful for students, it stands to reason that the presence and promotion of well-being would also be impactful for students. So educators can really be the gateway towards improving not only their own well-being, which is important in and of itself, but also the well-being of our children and ultimately the future of our planet. And that's the gate that we can go through. So what does this actually look like in real life? So an example could be for an educator, you wake up and before you reach for your phone, you still have your eyes closed, you're still in bed. You can spend a couple of minutes just setting your intentions for your students today. How do you want to show up for your students? Do you want to be helpful? Do you want to be funny? Do you want to be kind? Do you want to be patient? Just think about how you actually want to show up for your students that day. Then you go into school and you start the day with a morning staff meeting, and hopefully school leaders are also practicing their well-being skills, so they're able to show up with emotional awareness and create purposeful moments of actual connection where you're practicing actually listening to people and actually having a conversation. So communication flows better between the educators and the school staff. And then the day really kicks into high gear and classes are coming in and you're transitioning from one class to another and kids are talking and there's materials to put away and it's just a bit of a fluster and you take a moment. Just breathe 1 second to reset from one period to the next before the next set of students come in. You might go into lunch and instead of thinking about what you have to do that afternoon or the things that you have to do once you're done with school and the grocery pickup and the laundry that you're doing, just practice actually listening and being mindful and actively listening and fully present with what the person is saying and just paying attention to that conversation. And maybe in the afternoon, you have a difficult moment with a student. Now, I know that my children are absolutely perfect and angels every single second of every single day and would never, ever be difficult with their teachers, but someone else's kids might be difficult with their teachers. And I would hope that their teacher would then also be able to practice thinking about what made them act or feel or think that way. And then my kid would then also learn to reflect on why they made those choices or why they were thinking and feeling that way. And then the day you start feeling really frustrated because there's always construction on the road and you're getting really just annoyed at how long it's taking you to get home and you notice that you're gripping the steering wheel really hard and you're starting to see your knuckles getting white and you notice that. So then you purposefully unclench your hands and you return thinking to one thing that you're grateful for about that day, about your life circumstances, the color shoes you're wearing, anything. And then at the end of the day, you're home with your loved ones and you do something intentional to let go of the workday and you go for a short walk around the block together. And then at bedtime, you do your usual bedtime routine and you just take a few seconds to reflect with gratitude and set the intention for next days. That's how a well-being science can show up on a day. And no point that you have to stop doing what you were already doing. This is still a normal day. It matters what you do, how you show up in those moments, and what perspective you want to take, and how much awareness you are having in each of those moments. So when we're looking about how to apply the science of well-being on a larger scale, so more at the educational system level and not just at the individual teacher level, there are lots of things that we know will help and that we can consider as we are looking at this more holistically. So obviously we know that there are major structural barriers and considerations to educational systems that we can and should consider to improve the well-being for teachers. But we shouldn't discard the incremental changes that can really add up over time. So in addition to the thinking about the major structural changes, think about also how we can help people make the small choices. Because again, it's consistency that we're driving towards here. It's doing a little bit every day that builds up. So definitely focus on the big things, but don't lose sight on the small moments as well. Help people practice the growth mindset. Learning a new skill, any skill, is really hard and it can be really frustrating. And like I said, you're not going to remember to practice every single day or every 5 minutes that you have. Maybe you'll forget, and that's okay. It doesn't mean you failed at well-being and now it's a lost cause and you can never do it again. I feel like oftentimes as adults, we remember to teach our kids to have growth mindset, but we don't apply it to ourselves. So it can be helpful to go into some of these situations kind of expecting that there'll be good days and bad days. Because again, well-being isn't about the absence of bad days. It's not the absence of bad feelings. It's about how do you approach those bad days and how do you approach those bad feelings? And do you let them take complete control of your day and your life? Or do you approach them with curiosity and compassion and just let them go by? And then also consider communication and support. It's really hard to build a new habit. So, what are ways in which we can build a system where people are supporting each other and learning together and communicating together so that this well-being practice is something that is shaped as a community and it can really take its own flavor and something that will be more impactful as opposed to just us coming in and telling someone how to actually practice their well-being. Now, when I talk about evidence-based skills, I'm really talking about like what the actual training program itself is. There are a lot of things and a lot of programs that are aimed at education systems and at teachers, and they will have a variable amount of evidence behind them. And teachers are busy and they don't have time to waste on things that are not particularly well researched, that are not science-based or not research-backed. And school systems don't want to waste the money on things like this. So pick something that is going to have a solid body of evidence behind it so that you know that what they're spending those precious 5 minutes on is actually something that will be impactful. And then consider the barriers, not only again the structural, but what are the small barriers? Is it just information that might be preventing people from practicing some of these skills? Is it time? Is it resources? Is it money? Is it the ability to listen to something like this? Like, what are the things that are stopping people from consistently choosing to practice well-being almost every day? And then lastly, measure the impact, especially when we're considering something like an educational school system where every penny really does have to be accounted for and stretched. When you're measuring the impact of a well-being training, think outside and beyond just the impact to teachers, which again is important, and we absolutely should consider that. But I'll consider also the larger impact that might have on the school system and on students and on the teachers overall. So it's something that you can then look back and show to the teachers themselves and to the educational school system. Like, this is the investment that you made in the overall well-being of teachers, and it's having all of these impacts. Because the theory here is well-being is contagious and will absolutely continue trickling down through a system through this gate that is the educators. So Leslie, putting it all together, what does the science actually tell us? The three things here are well-being is a trainable skill for both the adults and the kids that they are shaping. Well-being training is impactful. It is impactful at the individual level, at the community level, and at the societal level. And we cannot afford to not invest in this. And lastly, well-being training is flexible. You don't have to wait until your life looks a certain way or has a certain characteristic to be able to fit in well-being training. Well-being training can fit into anybody's lives at any moment. It can fit into all of your lives right now as you are. and I'm going to prove it. You all ready? Well, then I'm going to actually open this up so I can see some more of you. So, deep breaths. I want you to bring to mind one positive thing in this moment. Is it something about the content that you just heard that you found interesting, or that you found new, that you found that resonated? Is it something positive about your life circumstances? How glad you are that you can take an hour from your day to learn more about how to impact the well-being of teachers? What an amazing thing you are all doing by taking time from your lives to do this. This is incredible. Is this someone in your life that is supporting you in this journey to actually improve the well-being of others? All of these moments of positivity can add up. We just have to pay attention to them. So the next time you go into your next session or your next meeting, take a moment to appreciate something about the person that you're talking to. Maybe even tell them about it. Infect them with a little bit of well-being. That's it. You did it. You've practiced well-being for the day. I told you anybody can do it. It doesn't take much. The science is clear. The need is absolutely clear. And the moment is right now. These next 5 minutes. Want to change the world with me? So I think we can do it. Well, thank you, everybody.